low on participants for now. They are joining in. Let's wait.
Okay.
Okay. Sir, it's also going to be streamed on YouTube.
Okay.
I guess the streaming is started. Paradox team, can you just confirm if it's streaming is started or
Yeah, guys, the stream
yeah.
is just started right now. Okay, all the best.
Great.
Oh, okay.
All right. And for some reason, my camera is frozen now, but I think my audio is working. Let's see.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, your audio is working. And
Great. All right. I'll see if I can get this camera to work. Hold on. That's a different camera.
Paradox team, are you there? Can you please provide co-host access to e-answer as well?
Okay, can I ask him to raise his hand? What's his name? Janssen.
Yes.
Okay, Janssen. You're asking for the guest, right?
Yes, of course.
Okay, I thought you were saying some student's name.
No, 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 no. Okay.
Yeah, okay. It's done, guys.
Also, can you pause streaming for now? Like it's a little mess up, and resume when we ask for that.
Sorry, it's not possible. You see, once we start the stream, it has to.
Okay, 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 okay.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. If you can see me and everything, that's fine. And hear me. This is my native, I guess, laptop camera. So won't be
It's really good. Like everything will be edited if it's needed, but I guess everything is clear for your side from your
great.
side.
Yeah, it's not as pretty, but it'll do the job. So okay.
Shrijal, are you there?
Yeah. Can we start?
Yes, of course. Can you turn on your camera as well, please? Okay. Yeah, just get started.
Hello, esteemed participants. A warm welcome to each and one of you in this exciting session. Today, we have here with us Mr. Ian Simmons, sir, judge of Frame Fusion, a cinematic hackathon organized by Paradox and Margazhi'. His cinematic journey, inspired by Nora, Ephron, Julie, and Julia, led to the creation of Kicking the Seat back in 2009. 3 years later, the Kicking the Seat podcast emerged quickly, becoming an under the radar gem revealing in hosting critic discussion, crafting themed shows, and conducting interviews with luminaries, and has found joy in bringing unique perspectives to the film appreciation. His relationship with our film society runs deep. Not only he was the inaugural guest for our In Conversation series, but his guidance played a pivotal role in production of Breaking Barriers, a Paradox story. Today we have an opportunity to interact with him, a man who wears many hats, a family man, professional, and a respected member of Chicago Film Critic Association. Welcome, sir. We are so honored to have you here with us today for joining in. And how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, and it's I've said before, and I'll say it again forever. It's an honor to be here and to meet everybody and to be part of this this awesome competition. I'm really excited and excited to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So, sir, according to my personal experience, film criticism is some heavy task. So, my first question: how did you started with this, and what was journey in the early days was like? Can you please explain this in detail?
Sure. I mean, as you kind of mentioned, I went to see the Nora Ephron movie Julie and Julia with my family, and I hated it. And on the car ride back home, I was with my wife, and I was like ranting and just complaining about how awful it was, and I was really getting worked up. And she said, you really need to do something with this energy. I don't know what it is, but you should do something with this other than yell at me. I didn't make the movie. So I kind of thought about it, and I decided I had already done some film writing for a different blog of mine, but I decided, well, I'll just make a website and I'll write movie reviews. And so I did that shortly thereafter. I came up with Kicking the Seat, and it was a lot of fun. And a couple of years after that, I started a podcast out of necessity because I landed, I think it was my first real like filmmaker interview, but it was an hour-long discussion, and I didn't want to sit and transcribe that entire thing because I'm a slow typist. So I just took the audio recording and I figured out how to upload it, and eventually, yeah, it came up with an audio podcast. Then that morphed into a YouTube channel a few years ago. I think it was like 2018, 2019, and then right around the time of the pandemic, when everybody was at home and not able to really go anywhere, so the in-person interview thing was kind of shot. I decided, well, I can do video interviews and Zoom calls and eventually StreamYard. And so I really ramped up production of the Kicking the Seat YouTube channel. And here I am. I mean, there is some other stuff that I skipped over. I won't give you the entire story because we could be here all day. But in 2012, 2013, I got an invitation to attend a screening at the famous Lake Street screening room in Chicago, where like Siskel and Ebert and a bunch of other luminaries would go and see advanced critic screenings. You know, critics go and watch these movies before they come out so they can write about them and all that. And I met the then president of the Chicago Film Critics Association, Dan Geyer, who invited me to apply for credentials for the Chicago Film Critics Association. And I didn't think I had a chance because, you know, I was just a blogger at that point. But I applied, went through the whole process, and I was able to get in. And that was 10 years ago. This is my 10th year with the CFCA. A great bunch of folks, and I've learned a lot from my colleagues, and many of the colleagues have become dear friends, and many of them have joined me on my Kicking the Seat journey. So yeah, it's a long storied history.
Thank you, sir. Your journey is so inspiring for me, and like seeing so much experience in this film criticism, it's like a hell lot of experience. And also, congratulations with your first screening at that time. I feel that it was a big thing for you at that time.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, so also a notice for attendees: you guys can post your Q&A in the Q&A section. Our team will pick up the most interesting and valuable question for sir. Also, coming to the next question. Multiple movie reviews, podcasts.
Okay. One thing. No one can ask questions because I turned off chat for now. Later we will just have a Q&A session if possible. Please continue, Srijit.
Yeah, sure. So producing multiple movie reviews podcast each week is undoubtedly a remarkable feat. Mr. Simon, how do you manage to stay constantly engaged in film criticism, and what is your criteria do you consider in evaluating the films? Like I've seen your lot of reviews podcast on YouTube, with even with our Shashwat and from other luminaries. So what criteria do you follow?
Well, let's see. I'll answer the first part, which you asked, which is how do I keep up? The answer is early days like this. You know, I get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning. I have a day job in addition to my family and everything. The day job is completely disconnected from film criticism, and it's very demanding. Plus, it involves a lot of commuting. So I get up really early. I work, you know, on the movie stuff when I can. It's just kind of stealing time here and there to write or produce YouTube videos or do the, you know, the thumbnails. Yeah, it's demanding. And actually, one of the lessons I've learned going into 2024 is scaling back. During the pandemic times, I had a lot more free time on my hands, so I could commit to doing, you know, 10 ongoing monthly series for the show. But now I'm thinking, well, maybe every other month is more realistic with everything that's going on. So yeah, it's great. And I couldn't do it without the collaborators, the guests that come on. I don't do as much writing as I used to because the YouTube production takes up a lot more time and it's harder to get the wheels going. I find I need like 4 or 5 hours to work on a written review, whereas YouTube is much more kind of a few minute bursts here and there to come up with the final product. But as far as evaluating, that's probably an entire episode in itself, and I don't even know that I'd have great answers then. I certainly have probably different criteria than when I started out. I was much more I guess combative and ready to kind of take movies to task, and a lot more unforgiving in the early days. But now that I've gotten older, and certainly talking to filmmakers, talking to screenwriters, getting more insight into the process of everything that goes into making movies, it's helped me to understand that a movie isn't just, what I sit down and watch. There's other things that go into it. Not to say that those kind of factors should be excuses for why a movie turns out poorly, but it can, explain certain things. And so when I say, oh, this director is terrible, well, a director isn't necessarily terrible. It could be studio interference. It could be, slashed budgets, any number of things. I try and evaluate a film as is, but I don't also like going scorched earth on tons of things unless it really gets under my skin. So yeah, there's a lot of different criteria for evaluating movies. I personally tend to be a story and character guy. All the flashy special effects in the world don't mean anything if I'm not engaged in the story, especially watching these 3-hour long, summer blockbusters. Now, as I've been introduced to the world of Indian cinema, I could do 3 hours standing on my head because the movies are great. But when I'm talking about like Hollywood comic book movies and things, I actually went on a year-long break from watching any comic book movie or related TV show last year because I couldn't stand it. They were just getting so terrible. And now that I've come back from them, I still kind of feel the same. So yeah, it's a multifaceted question. If there's some specifics, maybe later on I could possibly answer those, but yeah, it's kind of a big question.
Yeah, sorry for asking this huge question. Like, I know it's not an easy task to know. You have to consider many things like the feeling, the story, the direction, the acting. That's a huge job. So, as a film critic, you have had privilege of witnessing various trends emerging in the film industry. Could you share some observation, particularly in the context of technology and the storytelling of the film?
That's another tricky one. I don't know that. I feel like we're on the verge. We're in a particular moment right now where things are about to change in the next couple of years. I mean, in 2023, notably, we saw writer strikes and actor strikes, and part of that was centered around the specter of artificial intelligence and how that could be used in movies, and just the evolution of AI in the year 2023. You look at memes that were created in February, and they're nothing compared to what people can knock out now. So it's evolving, it's changing, it's changed the way people think about art and film and even culture. So my problem is with a lot of the strikes that were going on, and I'm on the side of the creatives, certainly, but I also understand that Hollywood is a business. But there's a third but in there. When I look at certain movies that are created by actual people, sometimes it's hard to tell because the material is so cliched, so been there, done that. I can't tell if a person wrote this or if it was written by a computer prompt. I went to see a movie called Anyone But You, which is a romantic comedy, had a terrific opening 10 minutes, and the rest of the 90 minutes was every checkbox from every romantic comedy that I've ever seen. And I just wonder, is there a screenwriting credit here? How is there a screenwriting credit here? I could have written this movie, in about a half hour. But I guess you get, great looking stars with comedic timing, and you can put out anything. So yeah, that's the thing. I'm curious to see how the concerns about AI are mitigated or evolve with the creative people, because it's like anything, it's a tool. As long as that tool doesn't become the thing in itself, I think we'll be okay.
So, sir, I heard your this big answer, and you mentioned AI. So, do you think that AI can take over this in the film industry, and how it can take over this film industry of cinemas and OTT platforms, streaming, and anything, editing, or something like AI can do?
Well, I mean, again, I'm not the most technically inclined person in the world. A lot of what I know is what I read. I mean, I am an artist by trade, or by training, and that's a whole other story. But I think about AI like this. It's only as good as the, I guess, the inputs and the technology that has come before. I mean, it's going to evolve to become greater and greater, but ultimately, if you're talking about a creative standpoint, you could pump in every screenplay that's ever been written into a prompt and say, okay, give me a story in this genre, give me this romantic comedy, give me this sci-fi film or whatever. But you really, I think, need that human touch, because people have the imagination to take what they've seen and meld it with perhaps their unique perspectives, their experiences, their imaginations of what if this happened, or what if you mix this genre with this genre, what would it be like? You might be able to get that from a technical standpoint from a computer program, but I don't think you're going to get the heart, the passion, the imagination that you get with a flesh and blood person. I could be wrong, but I'm on team human all the way. So I'm hoping, again, people use this as tools and find ways to innovate and grow with the technology, rather than just saying, oh, I can have this thing spit out a script for me, or spit out this image, or even this movie. That doesn't interest me. It's kind of scary, actually, but we'll see how it goes.
Same, sir. Team human.
All right.
So the
Solidarity.
balance, yeah. So the balancing elements like representation, visions, and storytelling is challenging for any director, any filmmaker, anyone. So could you elaborate your approach, how to evaluate these things? Like, if okay, I'm new to this film thing, and I'm seeing something film, and how do I see that if the person has this vision, storytelling, and is it correct for audience? Is it the correct message to the audience? How to determine this?
I mean, that is a broad question with many facets that I honestly struggle with all the time. I'll go see a movie and I'll be completely bored by it. But maybe I hate to say, well, it just wasn't made for me, because I think in some ways movies should be made for everybody. But if there's a target audience, I don't, if I love documentaries, and I only watch documentaries, and then I go see a romantic comedy and I hate the romantic comedy because it's not a documentary, that's not quite fair. It's a different kind of thing. You have to evaluate the films, I think, on their own terms, take into account kind of who it's for, but then also see, well, understanding that it's working within this genre and it's aimed at a specific audience. Does it do anything new? Does it bring anything to the table? Is it made to perhaps create people who are passionate about this genre or this kind of film? It's all very complicated and subjective, and partially based on how new you are to film or film criticism. If you've only ever seen 10 movies, then Transformers 6 might be the most amazing film you've ever seen. But if you've seen 100 Transformers 6s, then you're like, yeah, it's Transformers 602, and it's awful. But then again, I mean, I haven't seen Godzilla -1 yet. That's on my list to catch up with. But I know people who are tired of the Warner Brothers Legendary Pictures Godzilla Kong movies, and they got another one coming out this year. But they go see Godzilla -1 and they say, this is how you do it right, on a budget that is, it's like a 16th of what it costs to make those other big pictures. So, but again, it's also not coming from America. I'm slamming American studios here, I understand, because Godzilla -1 was a Japanese production, I believe, and I love Indian cinema. I think the American studios, not that they ever do this, because an executive would say, wait, you want a 3-hour movie where there's random dance numbers, and it's a romantic comedy, and it's a drama, and there's gunplay. I'm talking specifically of Donkey, which I saw last week and talked to Shashwat about. They would never greenlight something like that. But I think that you need to look with that open-mindedness kind of to other filmmakers, other industries, or I guess studios and cultures that are making content that's attracting a huge global audience, and say, how can we import some of that here? Because again, Transformers 6, Godzilla X Kong, come on. I haven't seen it. It's not out yet, but I watched the trailer and I nearly fell asleep. I don't even know if that answered your question. Sorry, I get off on a tangent sometimes.
Yeah, you actually answered the question.
Okay.
So actually, Godzilla is on my list also, and did my Dunkey revision 4th time recently.
Nice. So you've got one up on
5th time
Shashwat.
in
I
your
think he's only seen it 3.
podcast. Also, innovation and creativity play pivotal roles in filmmaking. How important are these elements in the film you review? Do you associate and appreciate unique creative aspects in the film, like the creativity of the how creativity the actors are showing in a specific film?
Yeah, I mean, creativity is definitely that's what I'm looking for. I mean, as film critics, we watch a lot of movies. I mean, I keep a spreadsheet of every movie I watch during the year. I just closed out 2023, and I think I watched something like 240 movies, which is a crazy amount. But I also know people who will watch 365 movies a year or more, which I can't even keep up with. But knowing that, we can get jaded as film critics or even just as moviegoers. If you go to the Cineplex every week and you see the same kind of thing over and over again, it can be hard to find those diamonds in the rough that isn't like everything else. Sometimes that's why you have to go to independent cinema or foreign cinema, whatever, to get those ideas, because Hollywood can get kind of sterile. Um, so yeah, I look for great performances. I look for unique new talents. That's always kind of fun. But sometimes those unique talents that everyone's talking about, me possibly because I'm an older guy, I just don't. I look at Sydney Sweeney, the star of Anyone But You. I don't mean to pick on that movie too much, but I look at her, I'm like, she looks like she's half awake during the entire movie. It helps that I guess that she's in a bikini. Maybe that's the appeal, but I don't see it. Um, but and I don't mean that to be offensive to anyone, but it's just my point of view when I'm watching something. It says, "Oh, she's a great talent." I'm like, "Great." I don't know. Maybe she will become a great talent, or maybe I just haven't seen enough of her work. But this movie's not it. So yeah, I like seeing new directors, new filmmaking techniques. I think one of the great stories I think of last year was Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, because when I saw Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse a few years ago, I thought that was the best Spider-Man movie I'd ever seen. And not only just with the storytelling, but with the innovative use of the technology and the animation, it was mind-blowing. It was an experience in the theater akin to seeing 2001: A Space Odyssey. And when I found that they were doing a sequel, I said, I don't want to see it, because Hollywood always gets that instinct. This movie won the Oscar. It made $1 billion. Let's make another one. Not interested. However, I saw Across the Spider-Verse and I loved it even more. And it's got a cliffhanger that now I can't wait to see the third one. And I'm mad that I have to wait 2 years or whatever it is to see it. And on top of that, it was made by a different filmmaking team. So that's incredible to me, that there can be continuity and evolution within, it's a Sony production, Sony Marvel. So yeah, there can be innovation within the big studios, but I can't quite explain that one. Maybe it's because it's not Marvel proper. They've got more leeway to kind of do their own thing. But yeah, that was something that really excited me. So I look for those opportunities to be amazed. And even though film critics get a bad rap, like we're always watching movies with our arms crossed and our brows furrowed, the truth is we love movies. We want to keep loving movies. We never want to go into a theater and say, I'm about to spend 2 hours hating something. No, we want to love it. It's just sometimes the movies make it a little difficult.
Thank you, sir. Even I thought the Pathan is the best film ever. Then I watched Danki and Jawan.
Oh,
the creativity increases at every movie.
I have not seen Pathan yet. I missed that one, but I did see Jawan, and that was my number one movie of 2023. It blew me away. I could not believe the twists and turns that went into that movie. And again, there's stuff in there that you would not see in a Hollywood production, probably for good reason, because people would get upset. But I love it. It's transgressive. It's great. It's political, I think, in all the right ways, and it's really entertaining. And Shah Rukh Khan, I get it. I totally understand it.
Yeah.
The appeal.
So, sir, given the subjective nature of the film, you mentioned it's so subjective. How do you, as a seasoned film critic, handle this subjectivity? And does this influence your judgment? Like, sometimes you may not know how subjective this film is, what the subjective thinking of the director and the producer.
That kind of loops back to what I was talking about earlier. It's a big question. It's hard to evaluate, except when you're, the subjectivity comes in, I think that's subjective on the part of the film critic and also the filmmaker. There's no such thing as an objectively great movie or an objectively bad movie, because every audience member, every critic, everyone who experiences the art takes away something different from it. And they also put in their own life experiences. You know, if I see a movie involving people from a different culture that I can't relate to, some people might just find that a barrier. Like I don't understand what's going on. I don't care about these people. But there are other folks who might be like, I'm immersed in this. I can see the humanity in these people's experience, even though it doesn't reflect my own. Maybe that means there's continuity between all people on some regards, and that's a lovely thing. So it's difficult. You can't please everyone, as the saying goes. So you just try and encounter a film on its own terms, understand what it's trying to say, understand how it's trying to say it, and then you evaluate, did it get its message across effectively, if there is a message, and did it entertain me?
Exactly, sir. This criticism depends from person to person. Also, sir, and finally, sir, do you have any suggestion, advice for our enthusiastic participants who are eager to showcase their talent in frame fusion? Any suggestion? It will be really honored.
Let's see. Advice. You know, you're getting ready to make a movie. I mean, just be excited about that. Take this opportunity to really showcase your voice, your perspective. I mean, we talked about AI and understand that AI will be, you know, something that's available to you as in incorporating into your filmmaking. Use it as a tool, not an excuse, not a crutch. When I'm watching these movies, I want to know that I'm watching something. You know, let's say there's a dozen or 24 movies that I'm about to watch, you know, in the next couple weeks or whatever. I want to know that I'm watching individual films, not something that's like, you know, 5 other pictures. It may be that people have the same perspectives and, you know, all that stuff or experiences, but how did the filmmaker experience those experiences in ways that the other filmmakers, if they're telling a similar kind of story, did not? You know, you can have a drama about 2 people meeting in a cafe and talking for, you know, 2 hours, cut up into a 10-minute movie. But how is that relationship different than someone else who might be telling the same kind of story? Yeah, just have fun with it. Realize that this is an opportunity to make a movie, which a lot of people don't have the opportunity to do. Maybe they dream about making movies, even if it's a short, and just enjoy it. Have fun, collaborate, use your voice. That's my rambling advice, I think.
Thank you, sir. And I also personally believe that this AI kills the creativity in any film. Also, sir, thank you for your amazing answers. Now we'll move to the audience questions. I
Sure.
assume the audience may be having many interesting questions from you, which we have missed.
Okay, I'm ready.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, you guys can raise your hand and I will unmute if, or you can just post your questions in Q&A or chats. There is one question in Q&A, which was to
Yeah.
how did you turn it into a profession? Yeah, right.
Well, let's see. This is a strange question because I am a professional film critic, but I am not. This is not my full-time job, as I've established. I just recently, like last year, became a YouTube partner, and I'm not making a whole lot of money off of it. A lot of what I get paid for is the opportunity to, interview great people, have access to screenings and things like that. So I get paid sort of in intangibles. But in terms of becoming a professional film critic, a lot of that came about, in joining the Chicago Film Critics Association, because at the time they were looking to expand their definition of what a professional film critic was. This is going back 10 years ago. So there were a lot of movie blogs, certainly not in the number that there are now. But the guidelines used to be, well, you need to be a member of like a print or radio or a television, critic, be on TV, be in print and newspaper, those kind of recognized bodies. but there was an expansion to recognize the emergence of film blogs, online film criticism, and that's not to say that anybody with a blog could get into the CFCA. They still want people to meet certain criteria, well thought out output, consistency, dedication to the craft, and all that. So in that sense, I was designated a professional film critic as a member of a recognized professional body. But am I making a living off of film criticism? Hopefully someday that would be amazing. But right now I'm doing it for the love of it, and also for, there are certain privileges that come with it. Like I say, you get into an organization that's recognized like this, suddenly you're on the list of publicists and studios, you get award season screeners, invitations to movies, opportunities to interview, people that you never thought you'd get to talk to. So that makes it all, I hesitate to say that, I'd take that over getting paid, a year's salary to do the same thing. That's probably a lie, because that would be great, but it's about an even trade-off. I'm very happy where I'm at.
So there's another question from Omkar. I usually don't like to watch movies without family, because family bringing is fun. So it's hard for me to find movies which are family friendly. So what I do, I see PG rating, but I'm confused how PG ETR ratings work.
Well, I'm not sure exactly. There's a couple ways to answer this question. The rating system, the MPAA has, G, PG, PG-13, R, NC-17, I think X. So, but the thing is, like, the standards for those ratings have evolved with, sort of American culture over the years. So you can watch something that back in the 1980s would have been, rated R, and now it's in PG-13 movies. And the PG rating, you can see, stuff that might not be the most family friendly depending on your family. Now, the flip side of that is, I went to go see Dunkey, and it was a very, crowded theater on a Wednesday night, and there were families there. And I was thinking, okay, this is a romantic dramedy action kind of movie. I don't know if it's not Pixar. So, like, little kids, I wondered if they would sit through a love story, an action story, a story about immigration. They did, and their attention was, they were glued to the screen as if it were the latest Disney movie. But then in the middle of it, not to give too much away, there's a scene in the middle of a desert in which a number of people are trying to escape horrifying conditions, and there's people being shot and killed. I'm thinking, this is different, especially in the context of being something that you take the family to, but there was no problem. So I guess it depends on the family. It depends, I'm going to be as sensitive as I can kind of culturally, because a family movie, I think, in terms of what I've seen of Indian cinema and sort of these masala films that have something for everyone, except maybe horror elements, I think those are pretty much kept kind of separate from what I've seen. It's a family film may mean something different in one country than it does certainly here in the US. I think growing up in the 1980s, when family movies were a lot more kind of dangerous and dark and scary, like I think of The Never-Ending Story, I think of The Goonies, that kind of stuff. We don't have those kinds of movies right now for kids, and I think we're much poorer for it.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I didn't imagine that they were brutally shot in that desert. Like, that was for me, like, I never imagined that that's gonna happen in that.
Well, especially, and then you've got this great, I mean, it's a bittersweet ending, but it's kind of a funny, happy resolution to that movie. You go through the entire emotional roller coaster about 6 times watching Dunkey. I don't know how I don't know how Harani does it, but he did the same thing with 3 Idiots, which I saw for the first time earlier this year. And that if that movie had come out in 2023, that would have fought with Jawan for my favorite picture of 2023, because 3 Idiots is phenomenal.
So, sir, another question by Divyansh Tiwari. What are your thoughts on anime movies?
I don't know enough about anime. I mean, I've seen prepare yourself, everybody. I've seen Akira, 30 years ago. That's like whenever someone said, "Oh, do you like anime?" Someone will say Akira, because that's like the Citizen Kane of anime, which it's a great film, but I just haven't kind of kept up with it. So I can't really speak to it as a genre.
So another question: how a film should contribute to the society? As a critic, what's your opinion on this?
From society to be specific. From society to be specific.
How
Like
should a film
these movies, how they should contribute to the film society, our film society. I guess the one who is asking is kind of.
I don't quite understand the question. How should movies contribute to a film society? Are you talking about the movies that are going to be made this week, or movies in general, or?
Oh, okay. Please clarify this question. Till then, there is another question. Which movie is the best movie you have seen till now?
The best movie ever? That's an impossible question. It's like trying to, pick between my favorite son. So, but I'll just say the best movie I've saw last year was Jawan. The best movie I've seen in the last, I keep wrestling, is the last half a decade or the last 10 years, but it's definitely RRR by S.S. Rajamouli, which is what started me on my whole journey of like getting into Indian films. That movie, I swear it changed my life. And I was fortunate enough. I don't know how many people know this story, but I saw the movie. I think Chris Gore of Film Threat was the first person, like early last year, to mention, "Hey, there's this movie. You have to watch it." So I finally caught up with it in the fall. It amazed me on Netflix. I found out that it was going to be at the Music Box Theater, which is like kind of a sacred art house theater here in Chicago, for one screening in one afternoon, and S.S. Rajamouli was going to be there. So I ordered my ticket. A number of my film critics friends, we got tickets because we knew what that meant. And I think it was a week or two before that, I actually got the chance to talk to S.S. Rajamouli as part of a film panel, like a Zoom interview. And then I met him just walking down the street at that screening. So you can imagine how like over the moon I was at that experience. And just to see the reaction, about half the people at that Music Box screening had never seen RRR, and the other half had. And by the time the movie was over, like throughout the film, the place was shaking. People were stomping their feet. They were clapping. They were cheering. They were yelling. It was a total experience. So RRR. There's my answer.
So for me, it's actually changing. Changing like before Donkey it was Pathan, Jawan, then Donkey. Now another one is coming. Another new movies.
All
For
right.
me,
Well,
it's
I want to see
changing.
them all. All right. That's good. That it's great that
Exactly.
you can have the experience. And I find this with Indian cinema is I have these semi-regular conversations, specifically with Shashwat, and he recommends that we watch a movie and talk about it. And I keep telling him I have yet to find a bad film that we've watched. And to the contrary, every time I see something new, and things get better and better. So yeah, I'm glad that you have that experience of being excited about the next batch of movies coming out, because frankly, when I look at the movies coming out in 2024 from the American Hollywood studios, I'm not excited. I'm bored. I don't want to go see them. So I'm glad that you have that experience, and that excites me too.
Guys, any more questions?
Yes, there is the question which I asked to elaborate. How a film should contribute to the society, like a society means public opinions and everything. As a critic, what is your opinion?
It's a tough question, because I think, especially now I hate to sound like an old man, but I am. I think movies used to mean a lot more because there were less of them. There was less, before social media, you could have a big event movie. It used to be there'd be one, maybe two movies that came out in the summer blockbuster. Now, summer begins like in late April, early May. It goes to September, and there's a new $300 million comic book movie video game adaptation coming out every weekend. There's no time for a cultural zeitgeist or for people to get really attached to something and say, this movie means the most to me. And the same thing with kind of, Oscar pictures and all that, because Hollywood movies in the theaters are competing with, there's probably 10 movies that come out on Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and Tubi and who knows every week. There's no time to catch up. So it really does rely on word of mouth. And even then, it's like, okay, I've got 5 friends and they can all recommend me 5 things that I have to watch right now. And I've got a job and kids and movies to watch and review, and I can't get to all of it. So I think, I don't know if movies have that power to affect society. I mean, I know last summer we had the Barbenheimer phenomenon, but I feel like that was more a triumph of marketing and meme culture. I don't know anyone who came away from Barbie necessarily saying, this has changed my life and maybe a completely different person, or the same with Oppenheimer, except maybe they said, I've had trouble sleeping. I saw Oppenheimer and it solved my problem. But that's just my own personal bias.
Also, sir, another question from Rohan Sahani. We as Indian can figure out when a Bollywood actor or actress is overreacting, but it's difficult to judge the same for Hollywood actors. So, how to figure out when a Hollywood actor or actresses are not overreacting?
When they're not overacting,
Yeah, overacting in a movie.
it's strange because I don't quite know how to answer that, except to say that I think I might have the same problem watching Indian films because I don't know the language. I'm reading subtitles while also watching the performance. So it's hard for me to judge, oh, is this accent off? Is this expression too much? Is it, too subdued? So I don't know. I can't say that. I'll say that, watching some films when they go, like, they swing from the dramatic to the comedic, some of it seems a little bit overblown. Like there's some stuff in Three Idiots where I think Harani actually used a slide whistle, that, kind of sound effect, which I'm like, maybe that's just something that they do over there, and it's perfectly acceptable. For me, I'm like, that seems a bit big, a bit broad, but on balance, I watched the rest of that movie. I'm like, yeah, sure, have a slide whistle. Why not? The whole thing's great. So I don't know, as far as, someone from India watching like a Hollywood movie and saying, I don't know if this actor is overacting or if they're a good actor or a bad actor. I think that just comes with, your own experience. Does it work for you in the scene? And also perhaps with time, with watching more of these movies, perhaps getting to know the cinematic language of it to find out, yeah, this works, or this could be a little different.
Sir, another question from Nishant Bano, Nihat Bano. Sorry for your mispronunciation. Do you feel the budget for Hollywood movies is justified, like in comparison with Indian movies, Bollywood movies?
I don't quite know the budgets of the Indian films that I've seen. So I can't really answer that question. If you could tell me, like, do the conversion and tell me in, US dollars how much like RRR or Jawan costs or whatever. I can't imagine it's nearly as much as, the average Marvel film. But I can tell you, like, I think Rajmouli spent months shooting that one scene towards the beginning of RRR, where I think it was Ram was going after the guy in the crowd, and that was done using extras and not like a horde of CGI, stunt doubles. I don't know how much that costs, but I know that the dedication was worth it. So yeah, I think Hollywood budgets are overblown. I can only speak from that perspective. You look at Godzilla Minus One, again, a movie I haven't seen. But when I find out that movie was made for $18 million or the equivalent of it, and then you look at something like The Marvels, which was $250 million just for production and reshoots, not even factoring in marketing, I'm like, there's something wrong here. I don't know. I don't know if this is a front or if this money is being laundered somewhere or just literally flushed down a toilet. But you look at something that comes out, wows audiences, and gets critical acclaim, that was made for, again, an 18th or a 20th the budget. I can't do math right now because I'm an artist and it's also early. But you're like, there's something wrong here. This is out of whack. Hollywood needs to learn some lessons.
So, sir, there's another really interesting question. Even I want to know this personally. So, what is the some important points should we have in mind while making a film to make a film really stand out from others? Like, it should be unique and interesting. So, what's your thought on this?
Wait, let's see. Sorry, I just saw a comment here. I will answer your question in a second, but I saw $40 million. Is that the budget for RRR?
Exactly. For
Really?
our 69 million.
For, how much? How much?
69 million for RRR.
Okay,
70
I think I
million
knew
yearly.
that. I think I knew that when it came out, and that still astounded me because yes, it's a lot of money, but it's still a third to a fifth of what Marvel puts out. And yeah, wow. Um, okay, so the question about it was when you're making your movies for the competition, what should you have in mind? Was that it? Or what should you be
Yes, sir.
thinking
How to
about?
make it unique so that it can stand out from others.
Um, Again, yeah, just go with your own voice. Hopefully, the voice in your head and in your heart doesn't sound like every other voice you'd hear, watching movies or on the street or with your friends. Bring whatever story you're trying to tell it the way you want to tell it, not the way that you think is going to be the most commercial or win you a competition. Just be honest about it. And again, put all your creativity, all your honesty into making the film. I know you're working under a very tight deadline. So you're not going to get a slick Hollywood production necessarily. Although if you did, that would be pretty amazing. But yeah, just make something that only you could make something that you would want to watch, make something that you think other people would want to watch without pandering to them. So as much as artists like to say, "Oh, I love this. This is all me, and I'm making it for myself," ultimately, art should be for some kind of an external audience as well. And if it's, a 5-minute movie in which you sit and eat a piece of pie, yeah, that was David Lowery did that in the movie Ghost Story a few years ago, and it was shocking to sit there in a theater and watch that for 5 minutes, Rooney Mara eating pie. I was like, that's definitely a choice, but that experimentation doesn't quite work in terms of grabbing an audience or telling me what is the significance of what I'm seeing.
So another really small question: how to bring out real experience or in a film? Like how it's asked by Nihad Bano.
Um, Okay, yeah, I think I've talked about like make it real, make it true to your own experiences. That can be difficult depending on what kind of story you're trying to tell. But let's just say, I went back to this idea of, two people sitting in a cafe having coffee and talking for 5 minutes. I mean, there have been scenes like that in movies for decades. But let's just say the scene from Looper, where Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Bruce Willis are having coffee at a diner, is much different than Pulp Fiction, when Tim Roth and Amanda Plummer are having the same kind of situation. They're in a diner having coffee. Two completely different takes on things, guided by the story that's trying to be told and also what the filmmakers are trying to accomplish, along with probably their own experiences of either, hey, this funny anecdote happened between me and a friend 20 years ago. I'm gonna bring this. Well, I know some of you are younger, so 20 years ago you probably weren't drinking coffee. At least I hope not. But say 5 years ago, you and a friend had a conversation, and your friend said something really funny or something really profound. You can work that into the scene and make it work for the story. Um, yeah, that's all I say is whatever any kind of gems that might be unique that you think, oh, I've never seen this in a movie, but it's something that profoundly affected me, or I thought was the funniest thing that ever happened to me. I'm going to put this into my story so other people can watch it and say, I've never seen that before, or that's a really funny joke. I got to tell my friends.
Thank you, sir. I think that answer will help us in making any new film, or even me in making any of my original film in the future. So another question from Anaga: what's the scope of a short film? Is Oscar qualifying film festival a good path for independent filmmaker to start off?
Um, I don't really know about like the criteria for Oscar nominated shorts or how that works. I mean, that's sort of a black box for me. But I would say, like, just in general, find a story, figure out like what story you want to tell, figure out how much time you have to tell it. I know the competition is specifically between 3 and 10 minutes. So, and you have just a few days to put this movie together. So I would say don't make your CGI comic book / space epic for this competition. You can tell maybe a chunk of story from that takes place in a cafe, if there is one, and make it all dialogue driven. I don't know. But just work with what find out what tools do you have, what team do you have, what time do you have, what time does the final product have to be, and just work within those constraints. You know, you don't want to leave the person hanging. It's good to leave someone wanting more. Like at the end of your film, I would love to be able to say, I wonder what happens next with these characters, or I want to know what this filmmaker is going to do next, because I'm really excited about what they did visually or what performances they got. But yeah, I would just say work with your tools and with your time, and make it all make sense in the end. Because if you get too ambitious, you might not finish. If you're not ambitious enough, then you could end up with a boring film. I know it's not a science, it's an art, as they say, that uses the tools of science.
So another question from Rohan Sahani. And what's your take on Zit, the movie?
On what?
Zeitgeist. I don't know how to pronounce this.
Can you put that up? I don't know. I'm not sure if I've. Let's see.
Yes, I put
Zeitgeist.
that on. Yeah.
Which is that? Zeitgeist. I'm not sure. I know the name. I'm not sure. And I could be getting this mixed up. Is that one of those? Is that one of the conspiracy films? Like the? No, I might be thinking of Loose Change. That like the. Okay, yes. I haven't seen it, but I've heard about it. Yeah. So I can't comment on it. As far as conspiracy theories, I'm not opposed to them. I don't believe all of them, but you know, as we've seen in the last several years, you know, what's the difference between conspiracy and the truth? The answer can be 6 months. So that's all I'll say.
Guys, we'll be taking only one or two questions. We across the time. Thank you for enthusiasm. So any question you can raise your hand, put on chat, or Q&A, anything. Okay, another question. Being a critic, do you still have that zeal for watching?
Yes, because I love movies. You know, when my wife told me to do something, you know, with all that pent up frustration, yeah, it didn't involve going out and making movies. You know, I think a lot of film critics, just like a lot of music critics and art critics, are frustrated people who aren't doing what they enjoy watching or experiencing. You know, I made one movie in high school, you know, 30 years ago, and it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. But I'm also, I think, way too solitary. I like collaborating with people, but I'm very much a solitary person. I like to go do things by myself. So that isn't necessarily conducive to getting a crew and going out and shooting stuff. I respect filmmakers a lot, and I do love seeing people who can bring that passion for making movies translate to the finished film on the screen. That's why I love, you know, independent filmmakers. Because when I watch them, I can see they haven't been corrupted by fame or money or trying to keep up with the latest trends. They are putting themselves out there, and I can tell. So yeah, and sometimes, like I said, even like with Spider-Man, Across the Spider-Verse, that's a big Hollywood blockbuster film, and it surprised the heck out of me because I didn't think, I had low expectations going in. Plus, I see a lot of bad Hollywood product, you know, every week. So there's always that opportunity to be surprised, which I think is what has kept me from being jaded. And also having film discussions with my fellow critics and with, you know, folks like you, and getting other perspectives, other insights. When I say, oh, this movie didn't work for me, someone else could say, oh, but what about this? Or think about this, or go back and rewatch this moment and see if it changes your mind. And sometimes I'll do that and be like, oh, this is a completely different movie, a completely different experience now. Or I'd say, no, it's still terrible, and then we'll talk about that. So it all opens up great discussions and future endeavors, so to speak.
So here we come to end of the session. Thank you,
Oh,
participants,
no.
for being. Yeah.
It's flown by. I can't believe it's been an hour.
Oh,
Wow.
another question. I think people are enjoying. What's your hot take on Westerners portrayed in Indian films?
The only thing that comes to mind, I think, you mean like Western actors appearing in Indian films? I would say the only one that really strikes me is RRR. He had Ray, I'm blanking on his name, the actor who passed away last year. He was in Ahsoka. but he played the sort of the governor who is the big villain of that film. Yeah, I mean, Ray Stevenson, thank you very much, Araga. Yeah, no problem with that. I mean, I think he played, he represented who he was supposed to represent. He represented it well, so I think that's great. If there's another context to that question, I don't have it because I'm still new to this journey, but yeah, definitely something to think about.
So sadly, we have to finish this session. Truly enjoyed it. Thank you, participants, for being the wonderful audience. I, Shrijal Gupta, was the host for this session. Once again, Mr. Simon, thank you for gracing with us presence. Your experience and insights are sure to enrich this event and inspire all those who aspire to make their work in the world of cinema. Thank you, sir, and sorry for ruining your New Year. Sorry for that.
Ruining my New Year? What do you mean? No.
Yeah, calling you in the morning in the New Year.
Hey, I'm up anyway, so I'd rather be up doing this than sending emails. So thank you very much for the opportunity, everybody. Thank you for engaging, indulging me as I ramble, and also asking some great questions. You've really got my brain started more than this coffee. So I'd like to end with a shameless plug, kicking the seat, the YouTube channel. That's where I'm doing most of my stuff. So like and subscribe and all that business. But also, yeah, I'm excited for talking to, I don't want to say too much, but I think, after this competition is over, there might be an opportunity to have broader conversations with maybe some of the people who are involved in the competition. So that's all I'll say. So I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, I really appreciate everybody.
Okay, so I think let's end the live stream.
Sir, first of all, that's a big opportunity for everyone. Thank you so much for offering that. Like we couldn't have imagined to like give a this big platform. Thank you so much for offering your podcast scene. And
Of course.
yes.
Yeah, I do have the Spotlight India series, that Shashwat and I have been working on for a while together, and I would love to have whoever wins this competition to come on and also talk to the rest of the Film Society putting on this event, and also talking to the people who contributed to the winning project. Yeah, it's a great opportunity for me, most of all, because I love learning. So thank you. All right.
Yeah,